Hello, I'm Michael with the UCI Road World Championship Local Organizing Committee, reporting live from Doha, Qatar on this lovely evening of the opening ceremony of the UCI Road World Championship, Doha, Qatar. So I'm with Brian Cookson, the president of the UCI. I just had a couple of questions about the effect that this event will have on cycling in the community and Middle East, North Africa.
Well, you know, we see from when we have major events all around the world that there's a big impact on people participating in that sport, and certainly that's the case with cycling. We're seeing cycling grow in all sorts of regions of the world now, and even here in the Gulf, where sometimes it's very hot, there's no question of that, but nevertheless cycling is a sport that has a part to play, and we're going to see some fantastic racing here over the next 8 days.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, let's talk about the weather for a moment. It's obviously very cool and comfortable this evening. I know you have a group of specialists looking into the weather conditions and the effect on athletes. Can you give us some sense of the effect that the heat will have on the athletes and maybe on the races?
Well, heat is always a very debilitating force in any endurance sport, especially in a sport like cycling, but which takes place over several hours in the case of the road races. So I think it's going to have a major impact, but we are confident, having considered the weather conditions, the annual climates here in Qatar, that the conditions will not be too extreme. But if there are exceptional circumstances, we have a plan of making sure that we look after our athletes carefully, and in that case we will maybe shorten some of the races and so on. But so far the weather reports are looking good, and I don't think we're going to have to do that. Instead, I think we're going to see some very challenging races, some strong winds perhaps that'll make the field split, and again with the very twisting and difficult finishing circuits, I think those are going to be crucial, and I think we're going to see the races split up quite considerably.
Well, let's talk about the race conditions and the course. The circuits are quite technical in their turns. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of a race we might be able to expect in these kinds of courses?
Well, you know, a lot of people have been saying that these are sprinters races, that there'll be a big bunch finish at the end of each of the races. I'm not convinced that's going to be the case, especially not with the elite men's and women's races, which are that bit longer than the others. I think especially the men's race, I think we're going to see the strong nations who are used to riding in windy conditions, like the Belgians and the Dutch and so on, trying to make things very difficult over the initial 150 kilometres, and then when we get to the circuit, I think we're going to see a completely different sort of race. I don't think there's going to be a big bunch sprint, although you never know. I think we're going to see, with all of those bends, all of those decelerations, hard braking, hard accelerating out of those dozens of corners on those finishing circuits at the end of the race, I think we're going to see some fragmentation in the peloton, and I think we're going to see a worthy world champion in each of our races.
Great, and I'll bring a last question for you, Brian. It's about new fans of cycling. We've got many new fans of cycling enjoying the pro sport for the first time. Do you have any suggestions for them on where is the best place to watch the race? Obviously, the obvious answer might be the finish line, but there may be some other places that you think are a good place for fans to enjoy.
Well, I think anywhere on the finishing circuit is going to be exciting, because you're going to get to see the riders several times before they cross the finish line. If you can combine that with a big screen experience, or bobbing in and out of your own home and watching on the television, then I think you'll have a really good experience. I think if you can get out and see the race, particularly the men's elite race on the long route into the desert, that's going to be interesting of itself. But you know, I think the finishing circuit is going to be absolutely critical to this race, and I think we're going to see some fantastic images coming out of that.
Well, that's great. Well, Brian, thank you for joining us this evening. It's been a wonderful opening ceremony, and we're glad that you've brought this race to Doha. Thank you very much.